Math Module 3, Lesson 1. I can make equivalent fractions with the number line, the area model, and numbers. Make sure everything I do in the video you're doing in your workbook. Good luck! First things first, split your one paper in thirds. Label the top 1, the middle third 2, and the bottom third 3. The first thing we're going to do is draw a number line. And we're going to label the left 0 above the line and 1 whole on the far right. Now we're going to represent halves, and so we're going to put the fractional pieces below the line. So we have 0 halves, 1 half, and 2 halves. Now we're going to focus on 1 half today, so let's draw an arrow marking that we're focusing at 1 half. Now we're going to model using the area model. So we're going to draw a square, and we're going to shade in just the left half. So this whole square is the 1 whole. However, just the left section is 1 half. Now right next to it, but with a little space between, we're going to do the exact same thing. So we're going to draw a vertical line cutting it in half. The entire square is 1 whole. And we're going to shade just that left section. And that's going to be our half. However, I'm going to make it into, now in that second area model, we're going to draw a horizontal line and going across right in the middle. So this is another way to model 1 half. So we're going to say I have one group of 2 out of 2 groups of 2. Here's my one group of 2 out of my 2 groups of 2. When I multiply the numerator, 1 times 2, it gets me 2 in the numerator, and then I do my denominator. 2 times 2 is 4. My denominator is already how many are in 1 whole. So my numerator tells me how many are shaded. So I have 2 out of the 4 pieces shaded. So what we know is 1 half is also equal to 2 fourths. So I also like to put 2 fourths underneath 1 half. So I know the equivalent fractions. So now we're going to draw another square. We're going to cut it in half. And we're going to shade the left section of it. And I'm going to label the whole. I'm going to label the half that's shaded. But now I'm going to partition it into 3 sections. So 1, 2, and then the third. So now I have one group of 3 out of 2 groups of 3. This is shown with one group of 3 out of 2 groups of 3. So let's do our multiplication. My numerator, 1 times 3 equals 3. And my denominator, 2 times 3 equals 6. So 3 6 must be equal to 1 half. And you know what? That also must be equal to 2 fourths. So I'm going to add 3 sixths. Now we're going to represent 1 half one more way. So we're going to draw one more square. This is my 1 whole. I'm going to shade in the left section. I'm labeling that 1 half. But now I'm going to partition it off into 4 sections of 4. So I have one group of 4 out of 2 groups of 4. So let's show that, how that's modeled. So I have one group of 4 out of 2 groups of 4. So what's that equal? Well, my numerator, 1 times 4 is 4. My denominator, 2 times 4 is 8. I have a total of 8 pieces, and 4 of those 8 are shaded in. So an equivalent of 1/2 is 4/8. So we can do 1/2 is equal to 4/8, which happens to be equal to 3/6 and 2/4. Yikes, let's fix that. And those are all the equivalent fractions and ways to model 1/2. Now we're going to draw a number line and model 2/3. So first is we're going to identify 0 and 1 above the number line. And because I said thirds, how many pieces must I break this into? 3. And we want them to be, because we're estimating, we want them to be as close to even as possible. So I have 1, 2, 3 sections. Awesome. So we have 0/3, we have 1/3, I have 2/3, and I have 3/3. When it's one whole, the numerator and the denominator are always the same. So like I said, we're focusing on 2/3. So let's draw an arrow. Now we're going to model using the area model. So I have my one whole, and I'm going to represent 2/3. So I'm going to break this into 3 pieces, and I'm shading 2 of them. So right now, I have 2/3 shaded. I want to find an equivalent fraction of 2/3. So let's partition it in half again. So I have 2 groups of 2 out of 3 groups of 2. And the way we see that is we have 2 groups of 2 and then 3 groups of 2. When we multiply that, we get numerator 2 times 2 is 4. My denominator 3 times 2 is 6. So my shaded is 4 pieces. 1, 2, 3, 4. And my denominator is how many total? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So an equivalent fraction for 2/3 is also 4/6. So we're going to put 4/6 is equivalent to 2/3. Let's model using the area model one more way. So let's draw another rectangle. So this is my hole. So I'm going to break it into thirds, just like we did on our number line. I'm going to shade in 2/3 because that's where we're focusing. And instead of partitioning it into 2 pieces, let's partition it into 3. So, oh, I forgot to label my 2/3. Yikes. So I have 2 groups of 3 out of 3 groups of 3. And the way we show that is we have 2 groups 3 times out of 3 groups 3 times. So let's multiply that out. The numerator, 2 times 3 is 6. Denominator, 3 times 3 is 9. So 2/3 must be equal to 6/9. So let's write 6/9. So 2/3 is equal to 4/6, which is also equal to 6/9. And we've modeled it 2 different ways. Make sure everything I've done, you've done too. For number 3, we're going to model 5/4. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to break it into 5 pieces. And I'm trying to make them all about the same. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I don't need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't need the rest of it, so I'm just going to erase it. Okay? So I'm first going to label 0. And because I'm doing 5/4, I know I'm going to have 0/4, 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 4/4, and 5/4. Well, where would one whole be? Remember, one whole is where the numerator matches the denominator. So here is my one whole. And I said we're going to focus on 5/4. Let's draw an arrow there so we know that's what we're focusing on right now. So we're going to try to find an equivalent fraction for 5/4. So let's draw our area model. So let's draw a rectangle this time. Let's change it up. So I know my 1 whole is out of 4. So it's 4/4. And I have more than 1 whole when I go to 5/4. So I need to draw a second whole. And I need to break it again in fourths. So a whole, a whole. All right, so now I need to shade 5 of the fourths. So here's 4/4, and then 1 more makes 5. So I'm going to label this. This is 5/4. Now, because we want to make an equivalent fraction, we can partition it off into however many groups we want. We can do we could partition it in 2 parts if we want to make it easy. You could do 3, you could do 4, you could do 5, etc. However, let's just make our life easy. So let's say 5 groups of 2 out of 4 groups of 2. And this is how we know. We have 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 groups of 2, because there's 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, out of 4 groups of 2, because each whole is 1, 2, 2 2s, 3 2s, 4 2s. Because remember, the denominator is talking about the whole. The numerator is talking about how many are shaded. So let's solve it. 5 groups of 2, so 5 times 2 is 10, out of 4 groups of 2, 4 times 2 is 8. So 5/4 is equivalent to 10/8. And on my number line, I'm going to put 10/8 below it. I could also have done 5 groups of 3, 4 groups of 3, 5 groups of 4, 4 groups of 4, etc., etc. Remember, the denominator is always talking about 1 whole. How many pieces are making up 1 whole? And in this case, I had to make 2 wholes just to get that 5/4. Okay? So 1 whole was made out of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I needed that second whole to get that 1/4 out of it to make it 5/4. Make sure you showed all your work. Good luck.